Melania Trump was born in 1970 in Novo Mesto, Slovenia, which was then part of Yugoslavia. She grew up in an ordinary working-class family, where her father, Viktor Navs, was a driver, and her mother, Amelija, worked in a textile factory. From a very young age, Melania showed a creative approach to life, and her family supported her passion for fashion and art. Her mother always encouraged her to follow her dreams, and her father taught her that hard work and dedication to your business can lead to success. She was the only child in the family, and, as often happens with only children, her life was filled with attention from her parents. As a child, Melania showed an interest in art and fashion, often drawing and taking part in school events related to theater and costumes. As a teenager, she began working as a model. Already at the age of 16, having passed beauty contests and several photo shoots, she attracted the attention of modeling agencies. All this, of course, was a step into the future that she so vividly imagined. Her dream of becoming a famous model gradually began to come true. Despite her initial success, Melania faced the challenges that all aspiring models face. She was younger than many of her colleagues, and her homeland, tiny Slovenia, was not as well known in the fashion world as Italy or France. However, Melania's ambitions were huge, and she did not let these obstacles stop her. At the age of 18, she moved to Slovenia's capital, Ljubljana, where her career continued to grow. One of the most significant moments in her life occurred in 1992, when she won a title at a local beauty contest. This was the beginning of her real career in the modeling business, and with each step she further established her reputation. However, her success was not limited to her modeling career. Melania continued her studies at the university, and her interest in design and art did not disappear, despite the fact that the fashion industry began to occupy an important place in her life. A few years later, in 1996, she received an invitation from one of the largest modeling agencies in the world, which opened up new horizons for her. Melania moved to Milan and then to Paris, where she signed a contract with international modeling agencies and began working on more serious shows, advertising campaigns, and photo shoots. She attracted attention with her beauty and sophisticated appearance, but at the same time remained modest and purposeful. At that time, her name became famous among industry professionals, but her success was not only due to her beautiful appearance. She worked tirelessly, and every step she took was aimed at achieving success in such a cruel and competitive field. Despite numerous offers from major brands, she always put personal goals above career ambitions, not allowing her principles to be sacrificed for the sake of temporary fame. Her life in fashion, however, was not without its problems. She soon realized that the modeling business was not only about beautiful photo shoots and parties, but also about fierce competition. Melania faced tough offers and moral dilemmas that many models prefer not to discuss. She turned down offers to star in films because she felt that her dignity was more important than career success. These lessons in her personal and professional life shaped her into a woman who would not allow any person or system to take advantage of her talents for personal gain. Living in Milan and Paris changed Melania, and she began to move more decisively towards her goal. The fashion world was not a place where you could just go with the flow. She understood that she was valued for her professionalism and tenacity. Not everyone who strives for success in such a competitive industry can maintain their principles, but Melania proved that it is possible to be successful and maintain your integrity. Melania Trump, now a confident model, realized that her success in Europe had opened up new horizons for her. But it was only the first step toward her real dream of becoming not only a famous model, but also a person who could influence social processes. Moving to New York was a new challenge for her. Big cities and world fashion capitals such as Milan and Paris attracted her on the one hand, but it was in America that she could find not only career opportunities, but also a chance for personal fulfillment. Upon arriving in New York, Melania felt that her life would never be the same. At this time, in 1996, she signed a contract with a modeling agency and began working with the largest American brands. Her face began to appear more and more often on the pages of fashion magazines, and more importantly, she felt that this was where she could realize her potential. In her new photo shoots and advertising campaigns, she began working with the most famous photographers and designers. However, despite all this success, she did not lose touch with the most important principles that she had formed in Europe. Melania became famous, but she became truly popular when her name began to be associated not only with her career in fashion, but also with a number of other significant achievements for her. She soon realized that the world of fashion for her was not only pictures of glamour and success, but also a fierce competition, where there are often forced compromises. She experienced firsthand that working as a model, while on a pedestal, is only possible if you do not give in to questions of personal principles. Melania decided that she would not give in to compromise offers. By giving up her film career, she saved her reputation in the eyes of the people. This decision, although it did not bring her the contracts that others dreamed of, strengthened her internal position. Melania was not ready to give up her own ideals for the sake of her career. She did not look for quick paths to fame, but wanted her success to be the result of long and hard work. This, in turn, attracted attention to her not only on the pages of fashion magazines, but also in the world of show business and culture. During this period, Melania began to feel that her modeling career was not just her path to recognition, but also an opportunity to become a more independent woman who could express her opinions on important issues. She used her publicity to promote ideas close to her heart. It was not an easy step, but she was ready to do everything in order to work by her own rules, and not by those set by the industry. This realization was an important step for her, and it was at this time that she began to think about how her life and career could be connected not only to the modeling industry, but also to more meaningful social activities. Gradually, as she gained confidence and realized that she could be much more than just a model, Melania began to think about how to go beyond the fashion industry. She thought about her dreams, her future, and how her name could be associated not only with career success, but also with more global, meaningful causes. These thoughts led her to an important decision. She wanted to use her popularity to engage in charity and support for women around the world. Melania didn't think her career path would be easy. She knew perfectly well that there would be many obstacles and doubts behind each step, both from her colleagues in the industry and from society. But her desire to be herself, to follow her ideals and not to give in to external pressure eventually made her an example for many young women around the world. With each new success in her career and step to new heights, she began to feel that her life in fashion was only a part of a larger and more important goal that she set for herself. New York became a place for Melania Trump not only for her career, but also for personal discoveries. The city where dreams came true was also a place where she would build a new life full of challenges and opportunities. Melania soon realized that New York was not just one of the world's fashion centers, it was a place where she needed to declare herself as an individual, not just as a model. Here she needed to find a balance between her professional career and personal independence. The first years in the city were not easy. Despite her success, her life was still full of work and overcoming many difficulties. In New York, she had to face high demands and tough competition. Melania felt from personal example that the fashion industry, especially in America, is distinguished not only by opportunities, but also by rather strict laws. Beauty standards, industry claims, constant comparison with colleagues, all this created pressure. Her self-confidence was questioned, and despite her external success, she often thought about who she really was. It was at this time, when she began to understand all the difficulties of a modeling career, that a turning point occurred in her life. Melania meets Donald Trump. This acquaintance did not immediately become a turning point, but it turned out to be a starting point in her life, which would soon change not only her own destiny, but also her personal perception of the world. Trump was a person everyone knew about. He was a rich, influential, and famous businessman, with whom she was connected by completely different worlds. His life seemed to be his own, full of strength, ambition, and success, while Melania was still looking for her own position. Their relationship began to develop gradually, but at some point Melania felt that her connection with Donald could become something more than just a casual acquaintance. Unlike many women who approached him with the obvious goal of winning his attention, Melania demonstrated neither ambition nor obvious interest. This did not mean that she was not interested in him as a person, but her approach was different. She felt that she should not just be a part of his life, she had to be someone who brought something more to the relationship than her status as a model or a wife. Meanwhile, Melania continued to work in New York, actively developing her career. She participated in fashion shows, worked with the biggest brands, but her desire to find more continued. She did not just want to be a model, she was looking for opportunities to make a real impact. While waiting for this moment, she gradually began to build a network of contacts, participate in charitable projects, supporting those who needed help. But gradually, her personal life and her relationship with Trump began to take on greater importance. They began appearing together at social events more often, and Melania quickly realized that she had to learn to navigate a new field, the world of politicians and celebrities. It was new to her, and she understood that in this world, you can't just stay on the surface. To be noticed, you have to get involved. Over time, Melania became more confident in her image and less concerned with how others perceived her. In 2005, when Trump asked her to marry him, Melania felt it was her chance to change her life. They got married, and this step was not only the development of her relationship with Trump, but also the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She was ready for new challenges. The wedding with Trump attracted the attention of the world media, and her life became even more public. But despite this, Melania continued to stay away from political life, preferring to remain a mystery to most. Amid all this, her career in fashion continued to grow. She continued to work, but now her life began to take on a different meaning. There came a point in her life when she began to feel that she could do more than just be part of show business. Her view of the world began to change, and perhaps for the first time, she realized that her place in this world was not just on the catwalk. Melania Trump continued to live in New York, but her life began to change significantly. Her relationship with Donald Trump became more and more public. With each passing day, she became more and more aware that her life would never be the same. As she became not only the wife of a billionaire, but also a woman in the spotlight of the world, she began to feel the pressure from society growing stronger. Not only did she have to live up to the high standards set by her husband, but she also had to live up to the expectations of those who watched her every move. In a world full of expectations, compliments, and criticism, Melania tried to find a place for herself where she could be herself, and not just a shadow of her husband. However, her wedding with Trump was a significant milestone. She understood that she had embarked on a completely new path. In this process, she had to be more active than she was used to, because now her life was connected not only with her career, but also with participation in social life, in political games, in which Trump was no longer just a businessman, but also a serious figure in the American political arena. Her entire image had to be perfect, from clothes to behavior. Despite the fact that Melania was not set up for public life, she had to adapt. By the time her husband decided to run for president, Melania was already fully involved in his political career. She became not just a supporter in his personal life, but also a part of his public image. However, despite all this publicity, she continued to remain an enigma to many. While Donald was a master of public speaking and masterfully created his public persona, Melania preferred to remain in the shadows, not advertising her personal views. Her role became more important with each passing day. As First Lady, Melania assumed an important role as America's ambassador abroad, visiting other countries, participating in international meetings, and negotiating business deals. But her style remained unchanged. Restraint, elegance, and sophistication were her hallmarks. She was willing to support her husband, but her public statements and behavior remained extremely cautious. At the same time, she was increasingly involved in aspects that were not visible to the public, developing her charitable initiatives, supporting programs to improve children's education, and continuing to actively fight cyberbullying through her Be Best initiative. The program aimed to help children by providing them with a safe and positive environment online. Although her activities were not as high profile as those of other public figures, they were noticeable to those who followed her work. Meanwhile, life in the White House was becoming increasingly tense. Melania realized that her role was not just to be the president's wife, but to embody the image of what American greatness should symbolize. More and more people were discussing her style, her statements, and her actions, although she herself continued to avoid overt political statements. One of the most challenging moments in Melania's life came in 2018, when the family separation scandal at the border erupted. While her husband was a vocal supporter of hardline immigration policies, Melania was the one who actually tried to balance the situation from a human rights perspective. She visited an immigration center in Texas, where she met with children separated from their families. It was a significant moment when the public saw another side of her, one that cared more about humanitarian issues than political ones. Melania certainly didn't spark an open debate, but her actions caught the attention of those who thought she had no political position. Melania's every move was under scrutiny. The contradictions between her personal image and her husband's policies were becoming obvious. While Donald Trump was actively challenging decisions and laws, Melania remained more silent, which often led to questions about her role. But she did not lose her resilience. She knew how to stay in the shadows, but her actions were never random. Since becoming First Lady, Melania Trump has increasingly become the subject of public discussion and criticism, but she has managed to maintain her individuality and calm. This path has become not only a test for her, but also a chance to prove herself. Unlike many other public figures, she has not sought to become the center of attention, and this has been her greatest strength. Melania Trump continued her role as First Lady with her usual restraint and dignity. But the more time she spent in the White House, the clearer it became that she was separate from the political scene. She was becoming not just the president's spouse, but also a wife who, in quiet moments and in her private life, became an important support for her husband, but in the public sphere remained an enigma. As outlandish as it may sound, life in the White House was a far cry from what Melania had imagined when she first married Donald. Throughout her first term as First Lady, she avoided the spotlight, preferring to keep a low profile and avoid unnecessary noise around her persona. She rarely gave interviews and made almost no public statements, which only reinforced her image as the quiet but strong figure behind her husband. Unlike Donald, whose rhetoric often exploded in news feeds and became the subject of heated discussions, Melania preferred to remain silent, focusing on her own initiatives, such as her Be Best project, aimed at combating cyberbullying among children and helping to protect children's rights. Although her work did not attract the same high-profile attention as her husband, Melania was not a passive observer. She was active in issues that affected the next generation, focusing in particular on social issues affecting children. Her agenda was well-intentioned, but it also attracted criticism, especially when her work intersected with more heated political debates. For example, her participation in meetings with children separated at the border provoked a storm of responses. Many saw her actions as an attempt to speak out in the context of the humanitarian crisis facing migrant children, but there was also criticism that these actions merely highlighted the inherent contradiction between her public stance and her husband's policies. Meanwhile, in her personal life, Melania remained calm and balanced. She built a relationship with her husband, not allowing the political storms outside to affect her own perception of life. Donald Trump was the center of all the news, but Melania looked for moments to maintain her inner balance. The White House became her new home, but as before, her personal space remained limited. Her path was not associated with the search for journalistic glory. And despite the political arena and all its challenges, she did not deviate from her original role, to be a woman who supports her husband, leaving aside the attention of the press and even the criticism that inevitably followed it. But it wasn't just her public actions that were the subject of discussion. Melania's support and views were in the context of her position, which was sometimes perceived as silent and isolated from Trump's overall policy line. This was reflected in her actions. She kept a low profile in the White House, but every move she made raised questions. Individuals like her were often the subject of speculation, and she knew how to play on that. In her first years in the White House, more and more people began to appreciate Melania not just as Trump's wife, but as a woman who could change public perceptions. It was important not only to be a wife, but also to maintain her own voice in an era when everything was politicized. Melania learned to be not just part of a political family, but also to embody a symbol that united humanitarian and personal values. She remained unfazed by the onslaught of criticism, and more importantly, she was able to choose her own path in a world where public opinion and political interests always cast doubt on personal decisions. She, like her husband, was an important figure in the political arena, but she managed to maintain her own boundary between politics and her personal life. She remained strong and independent, while serving as an example of the importance of maintaining one's identity and role, despite external challenges.